like I said, this type of epic fantasy is my jam.
Yeah.
In the acknowledgments, the author mentioned that they have some kind of medical condition and they need to meditate in order to filter out some kind of like bad air in their lungs. I don't remember all the details. You'll have to look it up yourself. But he said that's what he based his magic system on.
That's so cool.
On this type of meditation. For me, this is where my only complaint comes in, where it felt like the magic system was a little bit too complex.
There was a lot of moving pieces.
It is very video gamey.
Yeah, there is an aspect of this that I really liked, which is dragons are super all-powerful beings. So why would you want a human? Dragons absorb all of the latent magic in the world. Their human riders can help filter out the magic that doesn't fit with them or work with them. So it was a nice symbiotic relationship where they both help each other.
I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I liked that more than just, thank you, almighty being who has chosen me to be your underling. Hello and welcome to the Your Favorite Book Podcast. I'm Mallory.
I'm Tanner.
We're siblings.
We like reading books.
This week we are talking about Ascendant by Michael R. Miller.
Yeah. From the Songs of Chaos trilogy series. We have a lot.
I don't know how many there are. There's
series.
at least 2.
Yeah.
This is
at least 3.
This is week 1 of our Dragon Riders readathon.
Yeah.
For the month of June, we will be reading a whole bunch of Dragon Rider books, just the first book of multiple series, and sometime later on in the future, we will be doing a tiered list of where our favorites are.
And we're starting off hot this week with Ascendant, which is relatively popular right now. A friend of mine recommended it and reviewed it. And I was like, I am in the mood for a Dragon Rider book. I will pick it up and read it with my own 2 eyes.
Good. I had never heard anything about it at all.
Yeah. I wonder if this will start a new trend for dragon riding stuff. Just because it feels like it's kind of coming back. Like those tropes recycle themselves.
Yeah.
During Eragon, like in the early 2000s, there were a lot of dragon riding books. Eragon was super popular. And this feels like, to me, at least from what I remember about Eragon, it's like a better version of that.
Yeah.
And that could be because I'm a little bit older.
Yeah, that's true.
But it is a bit more grown up, although it feels kind of middle grade.
It did a little bit, and I don't know if that's just because the main character was a little bit younger than...
And there was very little romance.
Yeah.
No language either, which I enjoyed.
Yeah.
But it was an epic fantasy.
Yes, definitely.
Through and through.
Definitely. How long
I really
was
enjoyed
it?
this book.
Do
I
you
don't
know how
know.
long it
I
was?
only listened to the audiobook, and
Me
I think
too.
it was around 17 hours.
Yeah. I tried to find this on ebook and at the library, and I could not find either. I could not find a physical textual copy of this.
Yeah.
I mean, duh, of course they're out there. My library just didn't have it.
Yeah. Our library's pretty small.
Yes, it is.
They're like, red wall? What?
They're like, if it's not by Rowling or Riordan, then we're not picking it up.
We're being hyperbolic.
Yeah, that's
But that's
not
what
true.
it feels like.
Yeah.
That's our own biases, judging our small town. I really loved this book. It was quite long, and that's not a bad thing. I love epic fantasy. This is like my jam. This to me feels like more like the book that I would read instead of you.
Yeah.
Like it's not a romance. It's a heavy, heavy emphasis on world building. There's a lot of exposition in this book.
Yes.
Which, even for me, I love this type of stuff. Felt a little dry at times. That would be like my only complaint, really. But there's a lot of really good things going on in this book.
Yeah, I really liked it a lot. I love pretty much any Dragon Rider book. I don't think I've encountered a single one that I did not like.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah, so far. Give me another month before we see if that's true. But I really enjoyed it too. It's definitely more what you would read. But I enjoyed the whole thing. Like, I listened to it in 3 days, I think,
you finished it pretty quickly.
which is pretty fast for 17 hours.
I had to hold myself back.
Yeah.
I listened to like half of it in one day, and I was like, I am so far ahead.
Burning
I
through
need
it.
to like slow down so I can actually digest this thing.
Yeah.
But it really caught me it really hooked me at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved the beginning too.
Yeah.
the author does a great job at introducing the characters and the problems and internal conflict that the characters have that really make you invested super just from page 1.
Yeah. Characters are very emotionally relatable to me.
Yeah.
They didn't make me like crying because they're going through so much trauma, but you just like him.
Yeah.
He does like very typical save the cat stuff at the beginning of the book, and we'll talk about give you an overview of what this book is, but just real quick. Holt like feeds some cats, and he like makes sure to hold back the mean alley cat to make sure that the wounded disabled cat gets his food.
Yeah.
He stands up for a fishmonger who has to give all of his food to a dragon rider with no money because dragon riders are noble and entitled.
Yep.
And then he pays the fishmonger. So like right off, he's like doing these noble chivalrous things.
He's like Steve Rogers before he's Captain America.
Yeah, it's like 15-year-old Steve Rogers, and he's a cook.
Yeah.
He's a pauper.
The first time I was reading this, I was like, isn't this guy supposed to be poor? How's he paying this fishmonger as a 15-year-old? But that doesn't matter.
They do explain it.
Oh, they do?
Yeah.
How did I miss that?
He's like a cook for the royal kitchen.
Oh,
so it's not his money,
okay.
it's like the kingdom's.
That's
like,
right.
we need to feed our dragon riders.
Obviously,
send your boy to buy an elk.
Obviously, I listened to it too quickly to have missed that single sentence.
Just
kidding.
It's a tiny detail. Anyway, most of this book, it kind of feels like to me it's written to market, which we've mentioned this before. I don't have a problem with that.
No, it was totally entertaining and enjoyable.
Yeah, it like hit all those beats of a good dragon riding book.
And there's a little afterword at the end of this book, and the author himself is like, hey, I wrote this book because I loved Dragon Rider books as a kid, and I wanted to write a new one for this day and age, and I hit all the best tropes. Hope you like it. And I'm like, yes.
You did it. Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Thoroughly enjoyable for me. Character arcs were really satisfying.
Yeah.
The travelogue, I'm usually not a big fan of travelogue stuff.
Yeah.
But there were enough interesting things in new locations that it felt fresh to me.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with travelogues. I really enjoy them. And I really liked this one.
It depends. The nice thing about a travelogue is that you can change your location.
Yeah.
So it's like, we're in a mountainous area, then a volcano, then in a haunted castle.
Yeah.
You know, you could jump around all over the place.
Yeah.
Ghostsmith did a great job of that.
Yeah. Bonesmith.
Sorry, Bonesmith. Ghostsmith is the sequel.
Yeah.
I keep saying that because she becomes a Ghostsmith at the end, basically.
Spoiler.
Sorry. I didn't even think about that. But in this book, they do spend most of their time in the haunted forest.
Yes. Which is a very fun setting. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and there were interesting things happening inside of it. It's just for me, visually, I kept imagining them being in this dark forest, and it was dire so often. Like, their circumstances were dire.
Yeah.
They were running away the entire time.
Can we get some dappled sunlight through
I know.
the trees?
I want to break free. I want to find like a spring or like an ancient ruins, something like that, just to change up the tone a bit.
I did want a little bit more humor in the book.
Oh,
there was not a lot of humor.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It was still entertaining and enjoyable. I just really like to laugh.
Yeah.
But the main character isn't that funny, and the other two side characters are very serious.
Yeah.
So I see...
Ash is kind of
a little bit the comic relief.
Ash is Holt's dragon. We're really spiraling out of control here, but it doesn't matter. I agree with you. I feel like tonally it was very epic and dramatic.
Yeah.
But also very heartfelt. So it's kind of nothing super unique.
Yeah.
Like, obviously you and I share similar tastes in terms of tone.
Yeah.
Like, we love something like Gideon the Ninth. Where it's like, the characters will make you cry, but they'll also make you laugh.
Yeah, I use an app called Storygraph that I log in when I read all my books, and it charts all of it, and my top 2 genre tones are dark, moody, and adventurous. Yeah. Yeah, those are my top 3. So yes, you're correct.
That sounds cool. What's that app? I want it.
Storygraph. I'll show it to you.
Let's briefly give an overview of what this book is about.
Yes. So this book starts with Holt, who's a 15-year-old cook, son of a cook. His name is Holt Cook.
You son of a cook.
Yeah, and he's...
I thought that was cool. It's a nice little world building detail. Your last name is your occupation.
Well, because, like, we're Hansons, son of Han.
Yeah.
Or, like... if your last name was Tanner, if you were Tanner, you'd be a Tanner.
I've got basically 2 last names.
Yeah, you do.
There's a little boring detail. Do you want to know about this?
Yes.
Real world history?
Yes.
So after the plague in the Middle Ages, that's when they started having last names.
Oh, like occupational last names?
And they were based on your occupation.
Oh.
It's because so many people died that society basically collapsed. And that's like kind of how monarchies were first.
They were like, here's your structure, you're assigned to be the smith, you're assigned to be... Wow.
So like if your last name is Parker, then you probably descended from Europeans who were like hunters that looked over the king's grounds.
That's pretty cool.
Anyway.
I love that.
It felt real to me when he's like, my name is Holt Cook. And he was like ashamed of it at first. And there's a nice character arc where he becomes proud of it. Anyway, continue.
We see him at 15, and he's like, I'm going to be my dad's apprentice in a couple weeks. My birthday's soon.
He's not excited about it.
And he's like, he obviously has a passion for food and cooking and that kind of stuff, but he hates the system.
I feel like it was more like he loved his father, and he could see himself being a cook. I wouldn't say he's passionate about cooking.
Yeah.
But maybe it's like part of his family tradition. It's a part of who he is. He's not necessarily ashamed of that, but he resents being forced within that role. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's probably more accurate. I just liked the cooking aspect, and I felt like his character holds on to that for the whole book. Yeah. And you're correct. It is because he's yearning for that connection with his father. And it's part of his upbringing. Anyway.
He doesn't want to be a cook. No. That would be a pretty boring story if he's like, I just want to be a cook. And I am. Right. He's like, I'm a cook and I want to be a dragon rider. Yeah. Yeah. And so he helps prepare the foods for all the dragon riders, and he's good at it. His dad's really good at it. I imagine his dad's good at it. His dad's really good at it. And there's like a huge dragon rider who's coming to their town. His name is Silas Silverstrike. Silas Silverstrike. Pretty good names in this book. Yeah, I really liked him. And he's like the LeBron James of the dragon world. Yeah, if LeBron James were evil. Yeah, just kidding. And maybe he is. Oh, I'm so sorry. Spoilers. It's not much of a spoiler. This whole thing is a spoiler. Yeah. Same as every other one we've uploaded. If you haven't caught on by now. Anyway. The cool thing about this book is that they always like layer in nice little world building details very quickly. Yeah. Like Holt, he's buying an elk from a butcher, and he needs to get 2 because Silas's dragon loves elk. And every dragon has a type of food, meat specifically, that they love. And for Silverstrike's dragon, he's like a thunder dragon. He's a storm dragon. I think the dragons are mostly based off the Aristotelian elements. Earth, wind, fire, water. Yes. But he expands on that a little bit. There's like mystic dragons. Yeah. So there's room for more mystery there. But the dragon riders, they're like entitled and very noble. And so they demand like very high expectations from their poppers. Because obviously they're dragon riders, right? Yeah. They're the most powerful people in the world. So they can get whatever they want. So they first meet a dragon rider, Holt. Yeah. When... I can't remember his name. It's like some ice dragon flies in and he's like, fishmonger, give me fish. Yes. And I won't pay for it. Yes. I deserve it. Yeah. I take what is mine. Yes. And all that stuff is established really early. Yeah. Yeah. The dragon riders fight against the scourge. Yeah. Which is like this like plague upon the earth, and there's evil bugs. I could not stop picturing the bugs from Wreck-It Ralph. I pictured the bugs from Bug's Life. No, I didn't. Gigantic evil bugs. That's what dragons fight against. Yeah. And that's why dragon riders are venerated and revered among the normal folk. Yeah, they're like war hero celebrities who are protecting all of the other people in the world. Without them, they'd be dead by the scourge. Yeah. Although they can't stop the plague itself. They can only fight against the bugs. Yes. And the plague, we learn later on, infects everything. Yes. Humans, plants... And it's kind of animals. Like a zombie virus a little bit. It's kind of cool. It was cool. I loved when we got more descriptions about that. There's tons of variety in the world building. Lots of different creatures and monsters and And I liked that we got to see how the scourge affects
all of those different things. We see how it affects humans, dragons, horses.
Yeah. That was creepy.
Yeah, I loved it.
So many memorable scenes in this book.
Yeah, obviously we're a little scatterbrained because we're like, oh, but then this happened, but then this happened, but then this happened.
There's so much to talk about. So Holt wants to become a dragon rider.
Yes, and he has a secret hope in his heart that he will prepare the best feast for the dragons, and the dragon riders will be like, you boy, this is the best food my dragon's ever had. You'll be a dragon rider. And even his dad is like, dude. Yeah.
His heart breaks for his son.
I love that you think that's going to happen.
But chaos, or does his dad bring up the chaos versus order thing?
I think so.
Okay. If he doesn't say it specifically...
It's implied.
It's implied. He definitely says, you're a cook, you were born a cook, you're always going to be a cook.
Yeah.
And that's like the central theme to the book.
Yes.
Which is the dragon riders defeat chaos, and order is important.
Yeah.
So like, you were born to the role that you were born to.
Yeah,
and
stay
you can't
there.
leave that.
Yep.
And it's like such a relatable boyish fantasy.
Yeah.
Or childish fantasy, I'll say.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, this crazy thing will happen and I'll be famous.
Oh, yeah. It's like, I used to think that one day, okay, we lived by the high school.
Are we getting real?
No, this is actually true. Please, can I say this?
Yes.
This is going to be the best part of our whole podcast.
Okay.
We once lived near the place where High School Musical was filmed, and I thought one day I would be on campus and I'd sing, and they'd be like, oh, we're going to cast her as Troy and Gabriella's daughter.
It should have happened.
Yep, it
Fair
didn't.
enough.
It's relatable.
Yeah,
it's very relatable to hope that you'll be the crazy 1 in a million thing that happened in your life will change because of it.
It's really cute and heartwarming.
Yes, it is. And
like I said, I just got attached to Holt right away.
I did too.
It only gets
think
better.
He's great.
Yeah. His father tells him, you'll always be a cook. I'm sorry I have to let go of that fantasy. And then someone comes into the kitchen like a messenger and says, Silas Silverstrike has arrived early. He wants his elk. Quickly.
Yes.
And Holt is overhearing things and he burns the food that he's supposed to be cooking. His father gets mad, but his father is so sweet and gentle.
Yes.
And obviously loves his son.
Yeah.
And then Holt says something about like, I don't care about doing the right thing here. I need to see if I'm going to become a dragon rider or not. So then he leaves his father.
Yep. He's like, I'm going to riff-raff, street rat.
Yeah.
I don't buy that.
It's not a musical, Mallory.
It should be.
You think everything should be a musical?
Yeah.
I disagree.
Well, I did just get cast as Troy and Gabriella's daughter in
Wait,
High School
what?
Musical 3, so
No
I mean
way.
High School Musical 4.
Hell yeah.
No, that's not true. I don't remember how he gets to Broad.
He leaves the kitchen and then he joins the parade with a bunch of other people. And Broad is there. Broad, as soon as I was introduced to Broad in the book, I was like, well, that's going to be his mentor.
Yes.
Like, that's how stereotypical this book is.
Yes.
It's not a bad thing. Again, they're hitting all the right tropes. Broad is a former dragon rider, and they call him Brooding Broad.
Yeah.
He's a good
really
character.
moody.
Yeah.
He's kind of like Nick Miller.
Yeah, but he's not funny.
Yeah.
He might have been better if he were funny.
Yeah.
He's more like Nick Miller meets Ganondorf.
Yeah. Oh my
joking.
gosh. No, that's pretty good, actually.
Maybe like Ganondorf's physique.
Yeah.
But he's very serious, grumpy dad.
Yeah, and he used to have a dragon, and she passed away, which is very sad. And you, as a dragon rider, the stronger you become, the more physically strong you become. And if you're dragon...
Magically. Not like exterior
yes.
strength becomes more obvious.
And so but since his dragon has passed away, he no longer has magical ability, but he still is super strong and, has all of the wisdom of being a dragon rider.
Yeah. They'll call him Master Broad. Yeah, and Master Broad, he tells Holt, they meet each other at the parade, and Broad tells him, you worship these dragons and they're dragon riders? And Holt's like, yes, how can you not, sir? And then Broad tells him, well, I'll show you, basically. Come run an errand with me. We're going to feed the mystic dragon who is choosing the egg hatchlings right now.
Yes. So
they go up into this tall tower, and there's the general of this little city. It's called the Crag.
Which I love that name, too.
Yeah. The names of the locations were good as well.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the main castle that they travel to.
I can't either.
But the Crag is Holt's home, and there's the general, her dragon is choosing the dragon
She's
eggs.
she's the matriarch of the current brood hatch or whatever. Hatch, I don't know, brood, whatever.
Dragons in this world are just as intelligent, if not more intelligent than humans. Pretty typical dragon stuff.
Yeah, and there's, telepathic communication and a lot of mystical
All
powers.
the stuff that I like.
Yeah, I know, me too.
Yeah.
Like, there's a fun moment when Brode and Holt are in that hatchery witnessing this dragon, and the dragon sends, malicious thoughts to Holt, and Brode is like, hey, stop being silly, he's a nice guy.
Back off, he's a nice kid.
And Holt is like,
terrified.
I liked it.
Yeah. So what is the mystic dragon doing in this hatchery?
The mystic dragon is over-checking all of the eggs, and she can magically look into the egg and see if it's gonna be a good dragon or not. And so she's like, yes, you can hatch.
A healthy dragon.
No, you cannot hatch. You are an unhealthy dragon. And Holt watches her do this to one of the eggs. She's like, smoke. And so...
And Brode tells them, she's choosing which ones are healthy or not.
Yes. And Brode is like, you want to be one of us? Prove that you can follow the orders of the Order. The Dragon Riders are called the Order.
And they're separate from the government.
Yes. And so he's like, take that hatchling and go throw it off the cliff. And Holt is like, okay.
And it's interesting because this is kind of like the opportunity Holt wanted to prove himself that he could become a dragon rider, but not in the way that he expected.
Yeah.
If Holt obeys Brode, maybe he puts a word in with the Order and says, give this kid a chance.
Yeah.
But what a horrible thing to make him do.
Yeah.
And Holt is obviously naive, and he believes that once you become a dragon rider, your life is going to be perfect.
Yeah.
You'll be able to be free from the constraints of your former life. You can do whatever you want.
And
fight
you
against
get
the
to ride a
scourge,
dragon, you get magic, you get strong.
It's all perks to him. And Brode, he's trying to bring him back down to earth.
Yeah.
And telling him, hey, being in the Order, being a dragon rider is not as great as you think it is.
Yeah.
It's basically the same as your life as a cook, but the decisions you have to make are harder, and the consequences of failure are greater.
Yeah.
And this is Brode trying to teach Holt that in a very real way.
Yeah.
It's this is one of those hard decisions you have to make in order to survive in our world. Because it's scary out there. And when you learn about Brode's backstory, it makes total sense that he would behave this way.
Yeah.
Because the way that he lost his dragon is horrible, which we learn throughout halfway the story.
Yeah.
Like we said, all these characters feel fully realized. They have histories that make sense, and they act based on the way that those events have changed them.
Yeah, we've mentioned a lot that we hate when characters I hate you too.
Yeah.
Why? Because the author told us we had to hate each other and there's nothing deeper here. That does not happen in this book. There's so much great context and backstory to each character that is unique to each individual one, and you can see it just makes sense.
Yeah.
It feels so much more real.
Yeah, and that tension is so juicy. Anyway, Holt can't obviously throw the egg off the cliff.
Yes.
He doesn't have the inner strength, quote unquote, to do it in Brode's eyes.
I love stuff like this because I hate it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're angry at Brode.
Yeah, I like when characters are given impossible decisions, especially when that decision is hurt the innocent to prove that you're worthy. I don't know why I love to hate that trope, but I do.
I think it's kind of the save the cat thing again.
Yeah.
Right? Where if you want a reader to like your character, then you have them save a cat. And if you want them to hate them, then you kick a dog.
Yeah.
So it's kind of happening right here.
Yeah.
And it was foreshadowed earlier when Holt is feeding the cats. Literally feeding the cats. And he's like, I'll give the big alley cat some food, but I'll keep it at bay to protect the smaller cat that lost an eye or a leg or something. It's it's so simple but effective. And the fact that they contextualize the moment when Holt is choosing to spare an egg by saying Holt wants to break free of his societal bonds is perfect. Because you understand why he's making that decision to save the egg.
Yeah.
It's not I think the save a cat thing can be kind of vacant emotionally.
Yeah.
it can be a cheap trick, which is why when I first read that, I saw right through what was happening.
Yep.
I'm like, okay. So my very first impression was they're really relying heavily on cliches to make me like this character. But then we learn about him and his father, how he's a cook, and how he wants to be a dragon rider. Yeah. Because it represents freedom. So when he sees the dragons doing the exact same thing to their own kind as the humans doing that to him, then that's the emotional relatability that this entire book builds its foundation on.
Yeah, and it's a very strong foundation. Like,
it's super effective.
You can understand that as a human, and you want to root for him to be able to stay true to himself and his heart and his goals, and still complete all of those things without sacrificing too much of his humanity.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of similar to The Hunger Games, the first book, which we mention a lot. It's kind of like the gold standard for making a heroic character. Yep. That introduction, that book is basically entirely perfect in my eyes. Yeah. Because Katniss, she doesn't want to join the Hunger Games. She just wants to protect her family. She loves Prim. And she volunteers for Prim when she's chosen. Yeah. Showing us that she's a hero. And Holt is doing the same thing here. Where he's getting a chance to prove to himself, to Brode, that he's worthy of being a dragon rider. Yeah. He can make the hard decisions and be hard-hearted. Like Brode throughout this book constantly tells him and another character, Talia, that they lead with their heart. Yeah. And that it will get them into trouble. Yeah. But Holt breaks that rule constantly. So when he leads with his heart and chooses to save the dragon egg, giving up on his dream, then that shows us how much of a hero he is. Yes! It's so powerful. Yeah. Like, those little moments say so much more about those characters than what meets the eye. Yeah. Yeah. The author does a really great job of setting up Holt's character very, very well from the beginning, and he does not stray from that character. Sometimes I think when you read fantasy books, you'll get a servant with humble beginnings, and then they change so much by the end that you're like, oh, this character's unrecognizable from where they came from. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but he does a good job at staying true to the core of Holt's character and building around it instead of changing all of the good inside beginnings that he has. Yeah, he's very earnest. I would say that's probably the core of who Holt is that he'll always lead with his heart. Yeah. Which is cool because it goes against what his mentor tells him to. Yeah. And I really liked how much Holt cries in this book. Yeah. I know that sounds weird, but like... He's very vulnerable emotionally. It's so fantastic. Spoiler alert. Maybe I'll wait. I'll wait until we get to that point, actually. But he's a very emotional character, and there's no shame or anything. Like, there's a moment between when something emotional happens and he's exhausted and he just sobs and sobs and sobs, and Brode is with him, and I anticipated Brode to be like, suck it up. Man. But Brode just holds him until he's done crying. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's so great. I love that. As a person who doesn't like physical touch, it did make me cringe how much hugging there was. But I understood that they're trying to show emotional vulnerability. You're like, I know that when people hug, it's because they want to be close to each other emotionally. Yeah. I'm like looking at the scene like a flipping robot. Yeah, just kidding. Yeah, Holt kind of reminds me of another character from the Way of Kings named Adolin Colin, and he's kind of the same way. He's like not ashamed to wear his emotions on his sleeve. Yeah. He doesn't like to lie, and they're very earnest. I like that character type. I do too. And that is the overall tone of the book. Obviously, it's from the main character. But eventually Holt, he returns to... Holt and Brode leave the tower, and Brode is like, well, you failed. You see, you're not up for it. You'll never be a dragon rider. Yep. Holt returns to the kitchens. He can't stop thinking about the dragon egg, and he gets an opportunity to go back up to the tower because he left this silver platter up there. So he goes back up, gets the silver platter, and while he's at it... Ooh, that shiny egg is in the moonlight, and it's shining so beautifully next to me. Yeah. And there's also a moment when he's debating getting rid of it or not, and he feels this, like, warm connection inside of it, and he's like,
oh my gosh, maybe this is a sign that I need to steal this egg. And I was like, yeah, it is. Yeah. It is a sign.
It's nice. It's almost like the dragon knew that Holt spared its life.
Yeah.
Even though it was destined to be killed before it was even born. It's so heartless. So it's like one of the most perfect introductions I've read in a while. Like, if you read a book on screenwriting, then you would just check the box on all these items.
Yeah.
So the foundation is basically perfect, I would say.
Yeah.
That basically sets off the adventure for Holt and the rest of the crew. Holt raises the dragon up until it's like knee height, maybe shoulder height.
Yeah.
And it's really a cute dragon. It's like the reason why it was chosen as defective, basically, is because it was born blind. But he can communicate with Holt telepathically, and some of his other senses are heightened.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the dragon so much.
Yeah.
There's a really cute moment when the dragon first hatches and he's so scared and sad and doesn't know what to do. And Holt is like, I'm right here, boy. You're okay. It'll be okay. Which is such a great scene, and it gets better the longer the book goes on.
It comes back again and again. It comes
back multiple times.
And it's kind of a tear-jerking moment.
It's so sweet.
Because they do a really good job of giving you tons of dramatic scenes throughout the book. It's paced really well.
Yeah.
Like, there's moments of rising tension and then moments of rest
Yeah.
and exposition.
Yeah.
And at the times of great tension, Ash will communicate with Holt.
Yeah.
And it's not like a direct communication. It's more like they're sharing thoughts.
Yeah.
And Holt will see what Ash is thinking. And Ash, when he needs comfort, he thinks about the time when he first heard Holt's voice saying, "It's okay, boy."
It's sweet.
Adorable. And that's why their relationship is so pure to me, is because Ash was saved by Holt and in a world where the dragons would have killed Ash because he's blind.
Yeah.
And so Ash is like, the only person who really loves me for who I am is Holt, because he can relate to me in that same way.
Yeah, and like, I like how Holt...
Not because Holt is blind, but because Holt is also a peasant, and he was deemed unworthy to be a rider at birth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I really like their connection, too, because never once is Holt like, you're useless. Can't believe I stole Dragon, he's blind.
He doesn't care.
Never once. He's only ever worried about him. Like, he's like, he might never fly. How can a dragon feel like a good dragon if they can't fly, you know?
Yeah.
Like there's sweet moments when he's like, I'm gonna have to teach him to come to the sound of my voice instead of using sight to navigate, or, you know, like we see Ash learn how to navigate in the world that he's in without the use of his vision, and it's awesome. Like, he just, you know, adapts.
Yeah. He uses his tail. He slaps his tail against the ground.
Yep.
And then he uses echolocation, which is cool.
Yep.
I've always wanted a book with more echolocation in it ever since I read Gregor the Overlander when I was a wee lad. There's bats instead of dragons, which is cool.
Yeah,
Isn't that a cool pitch?
That is cool.
Anyway, that's not what this is about. So Ash and Holt, their home is attacked, the crag, by the Scourge.
Yeah.
And the Scourge, at least as far as I understand it, it's very typical epic fantasy where it's like you have a lot of questions about the world building and its history and how it works. The Scourge, I imagine, it comes around every so often.
Yeah.
Where it's like a giant infestation of bugs come from underground and attack all of these cities at once.
Yeah.
And then there's long periods of peace.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that the right read? Or are they constantly attacking?
I thought they were constantly attacking.
And then this is just a big invasion.
Yeah, I thought that they were like supposed to be in a safe area.
Okay.
And like they weren't near like the battlefront or whatever, and it was bizarre that they had come this far into like unoccupied territory, I guess. But in
like
the book,
a safe zone.
In the book, it does say that the Scourge is attracted to high population areas, so I don't know.
Okay. Regardless, because the characters refer to like an incursion years ago, and that's when Silas Silverstrike gained his renown. So I thought it was like every once in a while there are these big battles.
It's like cicadas.
Yeah.
Come out every 7 years.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of like that, but regardless,
Could be.
Another scourge is attacking the crag, and it's like an unprecedented attack because they're completely unprepared, the dragon riders. And Holt is being taken away with his father to these caravans. They're trying to escape the city.
Yeah.
And the entire time Holt is thinking about his dragon. His dragon's calling for
and
him. Please come help me.
He can't feel his dragon bond, and he's so terrified.
Because he's just a little baby.
Yeah.
And so Holt's father puts him to a wagon. He says, I'll come for you, Elf. And I love that they don't let go of Holt wanting to find his father.
Yes, I do too.
Most fantasies are like, just make him an orphan. It's so much easier.
Yeah.
But they deal with it. Regardless of whether or not that's a satisfying conclusion is up to your interpretation. Because Holt is looking for his father for most of this book. And he eventually finds him at the end. We won't get that away. But Holt leaves the caravan unbeknownst to his father.
Yeah, his father, no one knows he has a dragon. So he's also like, well, I can't just leave the safety. They're going to think I'm crazy, and I can't tell them, oh, my dragon I stole is upstairs. Which is a good, like, oh, what do I do? How do I...
It's nice and tense.
Yeah.
How do I solve this problem? Do I tell everyone I have a dragon? Because if they find out, they're going to banish me or kill me and kill Ash. Yeah. Because their society is really strict. Yeah. So he leaves the wagon and enters the besieged city to find Ash. And
I do always love, this is a micro trope that I love, and it's when servants use servant halls that no one knows about. Yeah. I don't know why I love that micro trope, but I do.
There's a couple of times when he says no one notices a servant. That comes up again and again. Yeah. And that's cool and interesting. So he finds Ash, and he and Ash have to run into the main castle for protection. Yeah. Because Ash is being kept inside of like some abandoned barn. And the only place that's safe from the scourge, these gigantic bugs that are attacking the city, is inside the castle, which is at like the top of the crag.
They're like...
And Ash and Holt are so exhausted from running up there. But one thing that's cool about this book is that they tell the characters, Holt and Ash, that their bond grows so quickly because they're put into dire situations. Yeah. That's how your bond grows, and that's how you become more powerful and magical.
Yeah, and that's how you can't force magical growth either. You can't make up situations. It's like serious fight or flight. Yeah. In order to have that bond grow.
Yeah, which is a nice reason for those two becoming more powerful throughout the book and gaining progress.
Yeah, because boy, do they go through it.
Yeah, they do. And you wonder what like a typical dragon rider's order training montage would look like. Yeah. But this would be like the best way to train someone. The problem is like at every scene they're like an inch away from death. Yeah. So Ash and Holt, they see that Silas Silverstrike, their hero, LeBron James, has betrayed their order and kills the general of the crag. And they lock themselves in like this cellar thing. Yeah. And they wake up later on. They tell that Ash like gives him some food or something. Yeah.
Ash found some beef jerky.
Yeah. Feeds it to Holt. They're both blind, but Ash can see. Yeah. And Holt is surprised by how quickly Ash is growing up.
Yeah. He's getting big fast, and he also, like a chapter before, started telepathically communicating with him, and his vocabulary expands so fast. Like, yeah. Like, he's even like, oh, it's like I'm talking to a teenager today. And he's like, oh, he's matured so much. 2 sentences later. And Holt is like, oh, I don't know what's normal, really. But even he is like, this seems really fast.
Yeah. There's a lot of, like, chosen one tropes there, too. Yeah. Where it's like, he and Ash are the special ones. Yep. Which usually bothers me unless there's, like, good obstacles for them to overcome, and they always have a cost. Yeah. And they do a good job of that.
Yeah, and we do get a pretty good explanation, too, at the end. Yeah. It's not just because they're different.
It's because of the way their bond started. Yeah. Yeah.
True love.
It's true. And they have a good world building explanation for why that's the case as well. Which we won't spoil, I don't think. It's kind of at the last exposition dump of the book.
Yeah, and it kind of sets up the other 3 books, however many there are.
But it didn't feel exhausting to get that exposition. At times throughout the book, there were moments where it was like, this is a little dry.
Yes.
which we'll get into. But this setup for the entire story, Holt and Ash are like the last two dragon riders from the crag.
Yeah, the Scourge killed every single dragon rider there.
And all the hatchlings. Except for the princess, Talia, was away visiting family because her brother had just died. So she was supposed to be at the crag and supposed to be killed, but she wasn't. So she abandoned her duty and went to find her family instead, to protect her family.
Against the rules.
Yeah.
And Ash and Holt wake up, and Ash is like, "Oh, I found some food for you." And he's like, "Beef jerky." And then they leave the cellar quietly and carefully, and on the way out, they run into Brode and Talia.
And her dragon, Pyra.
Pyra. She's a purple dragon. She's a fire dragon.
So when you join the order, you have to like let go of family ties, your former occupation. You kind of like become a monk.
Yeah.
You like live an ascetic lifestyle, basically. And Talia, she's no longer a princess, but people refer to her as Princess Talia. And she is torn, her story, between being loyal to the order and loyal to her family and her throne.
Yeah.
So she left the crag because she broke the rules, basically. She got permission from Brode to fly back, I think.
Yeah.
To check on her family. And while she was gone, the crag was attacked.
Yeah. So she's the only real dragon rider left from the crag, and then we've got a bonus scraggler that is Holt and Ash, who aren't official dragon riders, but I mean, he does have a dragon and he rides him, so...
Technically, he fits the bill. So that's basically the inciting incident for the book.
Yeah.
The whole story is about them traveling from the crag to Talia's kingdom and her home. To warn everyone that the Scourge is coming and they're not prepared for it.
Yeah.
And that Silas Silverstrike has betrayed them, but they're basing all of that based on Holt's word.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like not a trusted source.
Yeah,
not that he's
untrusted.
He hasn't proven
himself. Yeah. And there's also... I love this part because they have a really young dragon with them, which means they can't just go and fly. So there's some tension between Talia and Holt, because Talia could just leave on Pyra and go get her, but they have to stay together to stay safe. So there's a great cost to that. They can't fly because Ash is too young.
There's good internal conflict between Holt and Talia.
Yeah.
We won't go over everything that happens on their travel log, but and we've mentioned it earlier at the beginning of this podcast, but there's enough interesting scenes along the way that makes it exciting.
Yeah, and we get a lot of fun character backstory. Like, we get Brode's backstory, and we get a little bit more knowledge about Talia, and there's a good... Holt and Talia kind of butt heads a little bit. Yeah. And there's a great moment between the two of them where they're both like, "Okay, let's lay it all out there. What's your problem with me?" Yeah.
I love that stuff. That was probably like some of my favorite stuff in the book.
I'm making it sound silly. It was really touching, very well thought out, and you can see where both people come from, too. Yeah. And it was a nice, honest conversation with a lot of great character growth that came from it.
Yeah, their character relationships are probably, they're really good at a lot of stuff, the author. But that's probably where they were at their strongest.
I think so.
Is they oppose Holt and Talia against each other, not just for the sake of teenage drama, but because Holt, he's always held this resentment towards people in nobility, even though he might consider himself a good person. Yeah. And he blames Talia for that subconsciously. Yeah. For holding him back from being a dragon rider and saying, "Oh, you aren't good enough, and Ash isn't good enough to be a fully fledged dragon." And the reverse is also kind of true, because we mentioned this before, but Holt and Ash, while on their journey, they grow very quickly together. Holt can learn to use magic very quickly. Ash grows physically stronger very quickly for such a young dragon.
Yeah, and he has a new magic type too.
Yeah. And Talia kind of resents Holt for breaking the rules to get a dragon and to get everything that she's always wanted so easily.
Yeah, she's super jealous.
She had to work so hard, had to give up so much, her family, her throne, just to get an ounce of what Holt got very quickly for breaking the rules. Yeah. So
it's good. It's good.
Yeah, and it's not like they have one conversation, they fight, and then they get over it. It's like kind of a slow burn.
Yeah.
But their relationship has a very nice arc that's paced very well.
Yeah.
And it has a very satisfying resolution.
Yeah. And I also love Brode's relationship with both of them. And I love the mentor aspect of it all. It's really just touching and good. And I like how he kind of trains Holt.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like meditation magic kind of stuff that requires focus and time and energy that you can't quickly bust out in a day. And I really liked those scenes too. I thought it was interesting. It was a little bit slow sometimes, but I didn't really mind that much.
No, I didn't either. Like I said, this type of epic fantasy is my jam.
Yeah.
In the acknowledgments, the author mentioned that they have some kind of medical condition and they need to meditate in order to filter out some kind of like bad air in their lungs. I don't remember all the details. You'll have to look it up yourself. But he said that's what he based his magic system on.
That's so cool.
On this type of meditation. For me, this is where my only complaint comes in, where it felt like the magic system was a little bit too complex.
There was a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah. It is very video gamey.
Yeah. I did like, there is an aspect of this that I really liked, which is that dragons are super all-powerful beings. So why would you want a human? But dragons absorb all of the latent magic in the world, and their human riders can help filter out the magic that doesn't fit with them or work with them. So it was a nice symbiotic relationship where they both help each other.
I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I liked that more than just, thank you, almighty being who has chosen me to be your underling.
There was a definite cost to them using their magic. They couldn't just like pull it out on command forever.
Fireball.
Yeah. So for example, what you were talking about, like dragons collect the latent magic in the world automatically. Pyra is a fire dragon, and so she needs motes of magic based on fire. So her rider, Talia, will meditate beside a bonfire and will help her gather more fire motes of magic.
Yeah.
And clear her, like if she's walking through the woods, she'll pick up earth magic.
Yeah.
And Talia, while meditating, will remove those impurities.
Yeah. It was interesting.
So that stuff was cool. There are basically like two types of meditation. One is forging and the other one is collecting. But like I said, that's where it's like, I love this type of stuff. And even for me, it was maybe a little bit too complex.
There was a lot going on. You could have just kept the forging.
Yeah.
Or merged it into one thing that was a little simpler.
Or just gotten rid of the forging and kept the impurity cleansing one.
Yeah.
Cleansing, right?
I think so.
We'll call it cleansing.
Yeah. Sorry if it's wrong.
But all of that is to explain like why Holt and the other dragon riders need to meditate in order to use their magic.
Yeah.
Because the more that they use their magic, the lower the dragon's basically reservoir of magic becomes. And then when you meditate, you fill it back up.
Yeah.
At least as far as I understood it. The dragon's core. And the more that the dragon and the rider fight together, the stronger that core becomes.
Yeah.
And there are like 4 different levels. And with each level comes different quirks. This is where it felt so
super
video gaming, which was cool to me. It was probably the most complex magic system I've ever read about. And I'm a Brandon Sanderson fan.
Yeah, that's impressive.
But it did, for me, kind of feel like it was kind of hard to make sense of like, when is he cleansing and when is he forging and when does it matter?
Yeah, I didn't ever really differentiate between the two. I always assumed he did both of them at the same time.
I did too. That's where I felt like maybe we could just simplify it down to one.
Yeah.
Throughout the book, he does have a very nice arc. It's like one big training montage of him learning how to use magic.
Yeah, and I liked how it was difficult for him too.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like, oh, all of a sudden I can do 3 fireballs. He doesn't have the fireball ability, but the idea is there, you know?
Yeah. He learns like, he shoots a lunar beam of light out and he gives it a name.
Lunar shock.
Lunar shock. It's so video gamey.
So funny.
And then his level 2 attack is like an AoE heal or an AoE slow.
Yeah.
Like you could turn this into a video game.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
It is. They call it consecration.
Yeah. I loved that.
I did too.
I really like hard magic systems.
I enjoyed it, and I liked knowing that at each level, every rider will get a unique ability.
Yeah.
Like Talia's first one is basically Fireball, and then her second one is a fire wave that does a huge wave of fire all around her. Mm-hmm. And I liked that, and then it was exciting to see what Holt's version of those two things were too.
Yeah. So we should talk briefly about the meat. The meat?
Yes.
This is another cool aspect of their world building.
Yeah.
That's related to the dragon's magic.
Yeah. Each dragon magic type has a preference for different food, different meat specifically. Like Thalia's dragon.
She likes spiced beef.
Likes spiced beef the most because it's like fire dragon. Mm-hmm. And like water dragons prefer fish, and the storm dragon prefers elk. So while they're trying to figure out what kind of dragon Holt's dragon is, he's pure white, he's blind.
They think maybe he's a mystic.
Yeah, they think
don't
maybe
know.
he's mystic, and so...
And I don't think the color is necessarily an indication of their magic type.
Yeah, well, because the purple dragon's a fire type.
And they say, like, usually it's red dragons that are fire type, but there's other variations. It's just more rare. Yeah. So they can't tell what he is based on his type. And they based on his scale color.
Yeah, they try feeding him different types of food to see what will make a difference, and nothing sticks, and then finally he eats venison, and he's like, "This is so yummy!"
And Holt, he's got this family book of recipes, and it's all about, like, this is preparing the type of food that dragons like. Yeah. And he can't find anything about venison.
Yeah.
Just cool, right?
Yeah,
and
I liked it.
The reason why they've never found, like, a type of dragon that is like Ash is because they've always gotten rid of the defects.
Yeah.
So maybe the dragons have been this whole time, like, discarding new magic types that could have helped them in their war against the Scourge.
Yeah.
So we find out that Ash is a lunar drake, which is cool.
Yeah.
He's got, like, awesome moon-based magic.
Yeah, he's so cool. He breathes moonbeams.
Yeah. And part of what makes him so special is that he can also heal the Scourge.
Yeah, his magic is like the perfect opposite. Which I also enjoy that trope of, like, kingdom or something outside is awful, and then a new thing is formed from the earth or from nature to help combat that thing. Like, I really like that idea of balances in nature and in the world.
Definitely. Like, the dragons have been evolving to fight against the Scourge.
Yeah.
And Ash was just a natural progression of that. So he's like the first moon type of dragon.
Yeah.
And when they find that out, I could just feel Talia, like, seething in jealousy.
She's like...
It's like, how come he's special? He broke the rules. He got here when he's not supposed to.
Yeah.
He has to suffer the consequences.
And he gets the new dragon.
And he's already, like, using lunar blasts and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's all tied together with, like, Ash and Holt learning more about their magical type, learning to fly together. Yeah. And Holt and Talia butting heads and either growing closer together or going farther apart. And at the same time, they're traveling along their journey to the castle to warn everyone that the Scourge is coming. All of those types of progress are tied together, like, really well. Yeah. The internal stuff, the external stuff, the relationships, and the world building, they all mesh.
And he does such a good job at... It's not just, like... He has a delicate touch on some of the stuff, too. Like, the author has obviously spent a lot of time configuring this story and learning how his world works and crafting it. Like, there's moments when they think Silas is tracking them, and the way that they figure out whether or not he is by listening for the thunder strike of his powers, and they all count to see how far away it is, and then they look up and there's no storms. Yeah. Well, and there's no storms, so they're like, "Oh, it's him. We gotta get going." Like, I liked even just that small touch.
They definitely put the work in. It is all very detailed and considered. Yeah. The world building and the plot and their characters. It's just a big book.
I liked it. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did too. While they're traveling, there is a lot of, like, Brode and Talia speculating on, like, political stuff. Like, who killed my brother? Yeah. Haraway, the general of war, is working together with Silverstrike to bring the Scourge. Somehow they can control the Scourge. There's, like, that sense of mystery is also driving you. But I'll be honest, I did kind of tune out during those moments.
Yeah, I was not following along. And then by the time we got to the end, I'm like, have you mentioned to these people before?
Yeah. It does feel like at the climax, there's this big rush of information because you finally meet the Haraway guy who they've been saying might be the bad guy this entire time.
Yeah.
It's like you're catching up to all this stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's when you do that type of exposition, it's difficult to grasp because it doesn't matter to Holt.
Yeah. Well,
and we haven't met these characters yet.
There was one more thing about the solution at the end is that they find a magical object that proves their story.
Orb.
A ghost orb. We literally don't hear about that at all until they need it.
What, a ghost orb?
Yeah.
No, they bring it up at the beginning.
They do?
Yeah.
Oh.
Did you even read this book?
I did! When did they talk about it?
Silas Silverstrike in the beginning at the parade, he throws a ghost orb into the ground before everybody to show him like some great battle that he fought in, I think. So the ghost orb is like a magical object that can store memories.
I swear I read this book.
Yeah.
I promise I read this book.
No, it's okay, but I understand how it would feel like...
I'm so sorry, I take back the gripe.
Yeah. So this book, while it's a travelogue, it's also like a political conspiracy.
Yes.
And they're trying to figure out who done it, who murdered Talia's brother.
Yeah.
And she does solve the mystery, and for me it made sense and it was satisfying, but it does happen at like the last 20, maybe 15% of the book.
And we do get chapters from Talia's point of view at the end too, but I really liked that.
So did I.
I liked it.
I really enjoyed Talia's character. Her entire conflict is similar to Holt's, but in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Where she feels like she failed her family. She didn't listen to her heart. She's obeyed Brode and done what she's supposed to.
Yeah.
Which is her duty to listen to the order, to abandon her family. Her father and her brother both died because of it.
Yeah.
So she's like, do I just keep on doing what I'm told to do? Because it just leads to more pain.
Yeah.
And then she looks at Holt, who followed his heart, and things just keep working out for him.
Yes. It's so good.
These two characters do come closer together, and it is motivated by their past experiences.
Yes.
You can relate to them.
And they go through a lot together, too.
Yes, they do.
And we lose Brode halfway through.
Yeah.
And Talia really does take over that mentor thing, and it's fun to watch how she mentors Holt versus how Brode mentors Holt. Like, there's a moment when Holt gets injured by the blight, and he's like, Ash, come heal me. And she's like, no, do it yourself.
I love that moment.
And at first I was like, oh, interesting. And she's like, what happens if you don't have enough magic to use his magic? You need to learn how to do this yourself. I know you can do it, so do it. And it's a great moment. And
so many great scenes in this book.
Yeah, it's great. And that helps allow for more stuff to happen later on. And without that impact from Talia, it wouldn't have worked. I liked it.
So, like, dragon riders, they can use their magic through different parts of their body. And Holt, he first creates a channel through his arms so he can shoot lunar shock, right?
Yep.
And so he has to create channels through his legs as he becomes a better rider.
Yeah.
But it's a very difficult thing to do. So Holt wakes up after the night after Brode is basically killed. And he's on his own gathering some water. He's like, what a beautiful spring day.
Yeah.
And then he gets attacked by a zombie horse, a zombie wolf, 2 zombie dogs, and a zombie squirrel. I don't know if there's a zombie squirrel. But it's really a creepy scene.
It is. It's
where he's on his own. He has to use magic to defend himself. He loses his sword. He's a horrible swordsman.
Yes.
Which is a detail I liked. And I know you have a gripe about that.
No, I like that he was bad about it. I just wish that he was actually bad or showed improvement instead of being bad and then all of a sudden really, really good.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Like if he relied even more on his magic.
Yeah.
During his fights. But once he gets bitten by one of the dogs on his leg. And then he uses his own magic to heal himself. And it's like a really well-written scene.
Yeah, it was cool.
It feels tense. It feels challenging. And then he pushes his magic, heals himself.
Yeah.
And now he can use his leg to channel even more magic.
Right foot, let's stomp.
Yeah.
Left foot, let's stomp.
Boom, boom.
Hands on the knees. Sorry.
And then he can use an AoE attack later on.
Yes.
So it's so video gamey, but like I said, when he levels up, like there's a steep cost and a challenging obstacle for him to overcome to obtain it.
Yeah. It's really good.
Yeah. We should talk briefly about Ash's blindness.
Yeah. I loved it. That sounds weird. No, it doesn't.
I'm not a disabled person, so I don't know what type of representation people like that appreciate or what harms their communities.
Yeah.
But to me, it felt like a pretty faithful representation of a character with blindness.
Yeah, I'm not blind, but I do have other disabilities, and I really liked it a lot because we get a lot of internal despair from Ash in the beginning.
And from Holt, too.
And from Holt, of like, I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I am not as good as everybody else. And they meet...
Other dragons judge him.
Yeah, they do. Like, even...
Pyro when they first meet him.
You let him live?
Well, it's worse than that. They're like, we need to kill him. Like, he's scum.
Yeah.
He's unworthy to be alive. Because he's blind.
It's heartbreaking.
It's horrible.
And they meet a character who is soul-cursed.
This is like halfway through the book.
Dragonborn D&D class, basically.
They're on their travels and Brode has died.
Yeah, and they meet this guy named Rake. And
it's immediately after Brode dies.
Yeah.
Rake comes to save them from Silas Silverstrike.
Mm-hmm. And they talk to him and they're like, oh, what? Who are you? He's like 7 feet tall, dragon tail, scaly skin, patchy.
But a human face.
Human voice. It's really cool.
He's got a massive spear with a Dragon Rider sword like attached to the end, so he uses it like a lance.
And I mean, I'm assuming it's implied that it was a Dragon Rider who's had to become fused with their dragon. That's what's happening.
But it's cool that they never explain that.
They don't. And we get half a chapter from his point of view. I loved it. I want a whole book from Rake's point of view.
Yeah,
honestly.
Rake was cool.
But
he's kind of the light-hearted tone as well that we were missing.
He is a little bit.
But it was so brief.
He's not in a lot of the book.
He's very sarcastic.
Yeah. And Holt and Ash are like, you're a little bit different. How do you do it?
Well,
you know?
They meet a flock of wild dragons. I don't know what you would call that. A flight.
Yeah, they call it a flight
of wild dragons. And Rake is working with them, and they're asking him to fight against Silas Silverstrike because he's destroying their forest basically. And the earth dragons are trying to cleanse their forest of the scourge. The scourge is destroying their trees and their animals, and the dragons are fighting against it. And the life elder is the leader of the earth dragons. And Rake has said, I'll help you fight against Silverstrike and the other scourge if you give me a promise.
Wish.
And the flight of dragons, they do not like Rake, even though he's very powerful.
And he saved them a lot.
Yes. I don't know if they directly call him a freak, but they ostracize him for who he is.
Yeah. And Holt and Ash see that and are like, oh, wow, we think you're incredible and really, really cool. What's your experience
but
here?
But people don't like you.
Yeah, people
how
don't
do you
like
live
you.
With that?
How do you do it? And he's like, oh, it sucked.
And
I've
Rake
experienced that.
Notices that there's something different about Ash.
Yeah.
And Holt and their bond. He inspects their bond with magic.
Yeah. And he basically says, once I accepted myself the way that I was, I stopped caring what other people think about me.
But it didn't make it easier.
Thought about me. It didn't make it easier, but it helped, you know? And I don't know, I really liked that moment. It was cool to be able to see someone who is older and has more experience with being ostracized, talking to the next generation, you know, giving that guidance and that wisdom. I really liked that moment. I thought it was good. And after that, Ash kind of feels a lot more empowered in himself and is like, oh, if people are going to treat me differently anyway, then I'm going to embrace this part of myself. And he ties a blindfold over his eyes so that people won't. He's like, I'm making it a part of myself to be able to embrace this and be like, yes, I'm blind and I am doing all that you're doing and more.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm just as capable as you.
Yeah, it's great. It's fantastic. And it's good that Ash, the dragon, the individual with the disability, takes ownership by themselves over that. It's not like Holt, who's like, baby, good. You know what I mean?
Holt does feel bad for him being blind.
He does.
But he doesn't want to bring it up.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want to make Ash feel uncomfortable about it.
Yes.
Which was also a nice little detail that made Holt feel realistic.
Yeah.
Because Holt later on says, I'm sorry that you're blind, and I know you don't want me to apologize for it, but I don't regret saving you.
Yeah.
But I do feel bad for you.
Yeah.
And then Ash says, thank you, basically, for commiserating with me.
Yeah.
But you don't have to apologize for that. Like, there was so many nice moments where they consider, you know, Holt would actually feel that way about Ash.
Yeah, and I also like that sometimes when I read Dragon Rider books, it feels more like a pet.
Yeah.
Instead of like a companion or a partner. And there's a lot more of that partnership feeling in here where
Definitely.
Holt is like, wow, you're taking ownership over this. I appreciate that. I appreciate you. Let's go fight some bad guys.
And later on, Holt, he's arrested for being a traitor. We learn this political conspiracy stuff. They arrive at the castle, and there's something fishy about this new king who is one of Talia's uncles. And normally, Holt would be arrested and Ash would be probably killed by the Dragon Riders for stealing an egg and for Ash having this disability.
Yeah.
Holt's arrested because he stole a dragon egg. And they keep on telling him to say your name and then say your occupation. And then he says, I'm Holt Cook and I'm a Dragon Rider. And they keep beating him up for it. And Ash is like, Holt is holding Ash at bay.
Yeah.
And so it's a similar thing where it's like Ash has owned his blindness and Holt has owned his birthright.
Yeah.
Where it's like he's proving to himself that he doesn't need other people to limit his potential.
Yeah. It's so nice. Good.
So I think that's the reason why they feel like true companions instead of like master and pet.
Yeah.
It's because they obviously respect each other and their foundation is built on a place of true compassion.
Yeah.
For the situations.
Yeah.
Their relationship is so great.
It's so touching.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're adorable and I love them.
Yeah, so do I. It's a really fantastic book. It's one of those books where it's like people say cliches aren't a bad thing when they're done well.
Yeah.
And this is a good example of that.
It is. Like there's a lot of tropes that are hit, but it's done well and there's a reason why people love those tropes so much.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, is this one of your favorite books?
It's so hard to say. I think I'll say yes.
Yeah.
Because this is the type of book that I'll leave it alone for a while and it will keep coming back to me.
Yeah.
And that's a sign that it's a book that I really love.
Yeah.
And I would obviously recommend it.
Yeah.
What about you? Is this one of your favorite books?
I'm in the same boat as you.
It's hard to say.
It's hard to say. I really, really enjoyed it. I don't think it's one of my favorite books, but
Fair
I
enough.
would highly recommend it.
Yeah.
I really loved it. It was great.
Yeah. I think that's great. I'm really glad that you liked it.
I do too. What a great way to kick off our Dragon Rider readathon.
I know. And I have a feeling that we'll like all of the books on our list.
I do too.
Next week we're doing Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, which you've told me is more of a romantasy.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that we're starting off with like one of
Your
my
epic
type of
fantasy
favorite books and then
by
one of your.
romantasy.
Yeah.
Yep.
It'll be fun to compare.
Yep.
But thank you so much for watching.
Yep. Join us next time for a Fourth Wing discussion.
Yeah. If you read Ascendant and you liked it, leave a comment. Let us know what you thought.
Yeah. If you know how many books are in the series, please let us know.
Because we're not going to look it up. Thank you for watching.
Bye.